So for first time users of my Dovetail guide, I'd like to just run through a few helpful hints and pointers. So the grip, or the position of the guide to start with, sits on top of the work so that the magnet is positioned directly above the cut. So it's not down here, it sits on the work. Now, the pressure that's applied is threefold. One, this needs to be square, so that's pressure with your thumb to make sure it's flush with the wood. Second one is pressure with your forefinger to make sure that it sits down nicely. And the third one is just a balance on the back there. So when you take the guide to the wood, it's pressure there with your thumb, pressure down with your finger, and balance. And then we can make the cuts. So something else, if you're using the Japanese saw, is that frequently people hold the saw right at the back here, and this can feel a bit alien and a bit awkward. But actually, if you choke right down on the saw, which is the way it should be used for small cuts such as dovetails, you've got far more control over it, and for Western saw users it feels far more intuitive to do that. Now, as far as pressure goes, this guide needs to be held firmly. So firm against there, firm down there, firm at the back. That's going absolutely nowhere. The high friction pads will make sure of that. With regard to the grip on the saw, this needs to be light. It needs to be light, and the saw needs to do the work. So firm on the guide, light on the saw. Another question I often get asked is regarding the pads, regarding the low friction pads. Now, the best way to introduce the saw to the guide is to introduce it low down. So if you start up here, then you're likely to start to wear the pad. And although that doesn't actually affect the performance of the guide, it can look a bit scruffy. So when you introduce it, it's low down. So always low down. Now, if you do damage the pads, then each Dovetail guide comes with a little plastic bag with a couple of blue squares in. Now, this often confuses people, probably the colour, but the colour blue is just simply the backing paper. So if you want to replace it, then you just simply peel this off, use a bit of white spirit or mineral spirit to remove the stickiness, attach this, and then just trim the outer edges. But having said that, I've had a guide that I've been using for over 10 years and I've never changed the pads. Doesn't look too pretty, but it still works very well. And then one other point which sometimes confuses people is the need to turn the work in the vise. Now, with the guide, you saw that the cuts that I was making there were all nice and easy and I was comfortable. But if coming back the other way, I want to cut the other side, then I either have to get myself in a very unnatural position, or as I've seen someone else do in a video, actually swap to cutting left-handed. Now, obviously both of those are quite awkward. So what I would suggest you do is just simply turn it in the vise, and then that makes everything just as comfortable as the first set of cuts. And so firm hold on there, light hold on the saw, introduce the saw to the bottom, and make your cuts. Now, although I prefer using the Japanese saw with the magnetic guide, a frequently asked question is, can the guide be used with Western saws? And the answer is yes. So here we have a very nice Lie-Nielsen 15 TPI tapered dovetail saw, and it can be used in exactly the same way. The only restriction is the depth of cut. So So this guide and this saw will give you about a 1/2 inch depth of cut. So you can see here we've ended up just short of the baseline, but that's not a problem because you know your cuts are dead square, you know your cuts are dead straight and are exactly the same angle. So you can just simply go along and then the same procedure, you can turn it in the vise. So there, you can see with the cuts done that we've ended up coming up short. So it's just a simple matter then of using the kerf that's already been cut to just simply and the saw's not going to wander. It's just going to follow the kerf that you've already cut. So with another 20 seconds worth of work, there you have a perfect set of dovetails with a typical Western saw. Now if you're lucky enough to own one of these fine carcass saws, this one by Bad Axe Tool Works, then obviously the depth of cut is fantastic. This is a rip cut carcass saw and it's no problem at all. And you can see you have loads of space there. So even if you have something that's as large as this, 7/8 of an inch thick, again, absolutely no problem with this saw. So you can see there, this goes down and it'll go even further than this. It'll get up to about 1.25 inches if you want. So there we go. So the guide works very well with the Japanese saw and with a little bit of tweaking just as well with your Western saws. So I hope you found these tips and techniques interesting and allow you to get the most from your Barron magnetic dovetail guides. Thanks for watching.